11, sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. We had 4 of our best guys on it. We got it taken care of. Would everyone please stand for Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Taylor, if you would lead us in the opening prayer.
Yes, I will. All right. Dear Lord, thank you very much for everyone being here safely today. Hopefully, city manager is safe on his travels as well as the city attorney. Please look over us while we make decisions for the city as a whole, and look after all of us, our safety and our families, being healthy and happy. And in your son's name, we pray. Amen.
I'll make a motion before
I'll second that. All right. Let's go. All right.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dunphy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Here. Mr. Booth?
Present.
Ms. Jones? Here.
All right. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the July 27th, 2020 meeting? Could you please turn your phone off? Is there any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dunphy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Do we have any citizens' comments? Anyone out there?
I don't see any comments on it.
No comments? Okay. Andrew, you have no comments?
I have no comments.
All right. Okay. Business and organizational comments? Do you have anything since last meeting? I got the committee list out today. I realized I put Mr. Booth on 4 committees. Thank you, Carl. That is corrected. So everyone, just call your meetings. I'd like to get some kind of schedule whenever this COVID comes to a conclusion where we can have them on a dedicated day every month. I think would be good for everyone. Just start a schedule.
Sometimes we need to have them just like when they're needed.
Right,
I don't know
I
how
get it.
that'll work, so.
Yeah, I think Scott had emailed us all and requested for 3 of them for next week.
Yeah, he wants a Parks and Rec.
He's fire, Jill, and finance probably could too.
I'll get with Elizabeth and Justin and see what day works for them for a recreation.
I did get, last week when I mentioned that we were talking about possibly removing the dumpsters, I did get 3 people opposed to removing the dumpsters that either emailed me or messaged me on. And as the committee chairman, I'm going to go to them and explain them that we wouldn't just make it where they wouldn't have some way to recycle. That one of the things I needed to explain about that was, right now, those dumpsters aren't free. They go on the price of trash. So if we put bids out that said you have to provide a roll-off to anybody that wants to recycle, then it might not be any more money than what we're paying as part of our trash bill, because we put the bid specs out and the trash company bids on it, but that includes those dumpsters. So it might be, I've checked some other cities that have the roll-offs for recycling, and the bill's comparable to ours. So maybe we might be able to work it where it ends up being the same money, and you actually have a roll-off at home that you can roll out and roll back and not have to bring your stuff over here and not have to have the mess. So we'll have a meeting on that, and anybody that wants to comment on the meeting, we'll certainly listen to your comments, but we're looking at trying to get better services at the same money or maybe just a little more money.
Right, but I think the other issue is that people are dumping trash
Yes.
in these, and they're not using them exclusively for recycling. Plus, it makes our city building look bad, because when they're full, people continue to just leave things
And we
here.
will have to spend, if we keep the dumpsters, we will have to spend money
Yes.
we will have to spend money on security cameras or whatever to catch those people that are dumping trash, because it's causing the trouble with our providers that they have to dig the trash out of it.
Right.
And so it's possible that we can come close to the same money and
Provide the roll-off.
provide a roll-off and provide your at-home service. So the committee might even decide to bid it both ways and see how the bid comes out both ways, and then make a recommendation. So,
I know we'll do that next year. I personally believe that everybody should get recycling as part of their garbage service. It's 2020. We should be,
Yeah.
Proactive in this.
All right. Okay, so yes, we had a lot of things to discuss at the utilities meeting, especially with the trash contract. Okay, anyone else have anything?
Sometime next week, and we're,
I can do, 7 o'clock any night, Wednesday.
So we're gonna have,
can we get done in an hour?
huh?
Can we get done in an hour?
Oh, yeah, sure.
We could do 8 at utility.
it'd be better to do them back to back. Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Well, that's good for you.
8 after precinct working.
What night?
Which night?
Whatever night you want.
You just do, you guys want to do Monday night, or?
You can do the next one.
Next Monday, that's fine. So Monday night, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock,
And then, how does Wednesday work at 7 for a recreation committee? Does that work for you guys? Yeah. Okay, so Wednesday at 7, we'll have a recreation committee meeting. All right, got that settled. Next week, yes, ma'am. All right, so now we're up to second readings. We have ordinance 58-20. Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. I missed out on that.
Okay, so let's get the clock.
I got it. Ready?
7:17.
You're on, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm going with third street.
Ready?
So we've seen a increase of non-compliance in the last 60 days with code enforcement. We normally reach about a 20-25% compliance with code, and in the last 60 days, we're at 42% of non-compliance, or compliance. I issued 73 warnings and 31 citations were issued in the mayor's court. So out of the 73 warnings, 31 of those warnings went into the next phase, which is the citation. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm thinking it's communication, like folks aren't really communicating with me. They're receiving the warnings, they're being educated, they know what they need to do. It's all black and white. They're getting the warnings, but they're just not complying with the warnings. So that's a big change in the last 3 months, or I should say 90 days. We are currently working on condemning 7 buildings in the city. I just want to give the locations again. 217 St. Charles, 823 Walnut, 253 Myers, 525 Patton.
Becky, can you speak to the microphone? People online are saying they can't understand.
And start back over really slow for those people who can't write real fast. 217 St. Charles.
217 St. Charles, 823 Walnut, 253 Myers, 525 Patton, 855 High, 177 Myers, and 770 Poplar. Of the mentioned properties, we have 3 that are currently being occupied. So someone's living in the buildings. We have had no compliance or even initiate the order to restore, board up, or demolish within the given time. So our next step was to give a 3-day eviction notice. We did that. It was given to the individuals, and after the 7 days, the occupants are still in the residence, and no initiative has taken place. So our next step, we now have built our case for these properties that are being lived in, and we've reached out to the Athens County Municipal Court to evict the occupants that are living in the unsafe, unsanitary conditions that make it a hazard to the occupants and public. So that's where we are now on those houses. At the last council meeting, there were a lot of questions on the vacant property fees. I would just like to address and correct some corrections to be made. It looks like it was an oversight, or it was just my mistake about the max penalty for not registering. I had $1,000. It should have been $800. It would have been half of the $1,600. So I would like to ask for correction on that.
No motion to change it when you're ready to read it.
And I just want to talk a little bit about some of the vacant buildings in the city and what I've been doing as the code officer. In July of 2020, I started to compile a list of vacant buildings in the city, both residential and commercial. To date, we only have 7 properties that have self-registered. Self-registered means you either call, email, or get the application. It's online. You fill it out and you send it in. Right now, there's no current fee for that process or for that application. I cannot find any list or applications prior to October of 2018. I've searched, can't find them. I believe that vacant building registration would be a successful tool used in the fight against blight in our city. However, at this time, the program does not appear to be working and will require quite a bit of time to make it successful. It will entail a lot of field work from me, and it will also entail a tremendous amount of administrative work. As you guys are all aware, because you live in the city, you're aware that there's a lot of vacant residents, there's a lot of vacant commercials in the community. There's way more than 7. So right now, our vacant property code is not working for us. It's working against us. It's working against us because we have individuals that are ignoring the vacant registration code that's currently been on the books.
Can I ask, how long has this, when was this code put in the book?
I believe, I would have to, Andrea and I would have to research, but I think it's been about 10 years plus since that's been put in. We can find the exact time frame that was done. But it's apparent that when it was put in, it's not working. It's not benefiting any of us.
It's not
So we
being
need to make a
enforced either,
change.
right?
But it's, right, I think it would be nice if, like, when these things get entered, like, if a date would be put next to it so we know, like, when it was entered or when it was, so we can find that out. But, like, no one's ever tried to enforce it before either, right?
Well, I've only been here since October 2018, so I can only speak for myself, and no, I have not. I have not enforced it by taking people to court, by educating people and making it a topic, because I had an issue with the rental registration, trying to get that program on track, which is now on track. This is, and I'm going to go ahead and read some more here. It will entail a lot of field work and administrative work to locate all vacant buildings, remind the residents, educate the residents, and force compliance with property owners. Our rental program has had the most successful year since 2000. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read from this. Okay, our rental program was in the same situation when I took over the program in 2019. As of 2020, the program has been the most successful year it has seen since the code went into effect. I'm hoping to have the same results with the vacant building code. However, it must not be a financial burden to the city to gain compliance and allow the program to prosper. I realize this may result in forced compliance and taking property owners to court for compliance. These actions take time and resources from the city. There must be a fees attached in order to run the program successfully. I hope this helps with any questions you guys may have had at the last council meeting. Now, one of the other questions I had is what constitutes a vacant building? We have the definitions in our code currently. You can look up the code, and the definition of vacant building means a structure that is unoccupied for more than 90 days or more, or which constitutes a structure unfit for human occupancy, an unsafe building, or a building or premises that are a public nuisance. In this case of structures containing multiple dwelling units, multiple commercial and industrial units, or a combination thereof, a building shall be considered vacant when a majority of the units are unoccupied, unless any part of the building is considered unfit for human habitation, unsafe, or a public nuisance. Then the entire premises shall be considered subject to these regulations. Now, when you look at the code, the definitions tell us what a structure unfit for human occupancy is. It tells us what an unsafe structure is. It tells us what public nuisance shall mean. So all of those definitions, and instead of me reading it out and taking an hour of your guys' time because it is 5 pages, I can send that to you, or anyone, citizens, any of you guys can find it online. It's on our city webpage, and it's under, I believe it's under general offenses, I believe. It is, it's under chapter 9. So those are all, if you have any questions, how do you constitute a vacant building? I just told you how you constitute a vacant building. What is an unsafe structure? So with the code currently, it gives us all those definitions, and as we apply law to anything, a speeding ticket, it's up, and I'll give this as an example. If you are stopped for speeding, and you have your sister in this beside you, she's pregnant, she's on delivery, and the officer comes up. The officer can use his discretion. He can say, I'm going to ticket you. Or he can say, I'm going to follow in front of you, make sure you're safe getting to the hospital or call the squad. Another person's coming through and they're speeding. He stops them. He smells alcohol or drugs. He can give that person a ticket, which most likely he will, before he would the lady that's trying to get to the hospital. So we use our discretion as officers of the law, and I took an oath to do that, to try to be reasonable with people. So when I say reasonable, one of the questions was the college. Their numbers are down, so their buildings are more vacant. How can I justify fining them for a vacant building if that building, there's no permits coming out of it, there's no rats infested, there's no law enforcement calls to that building. It's a nice little structure. They keep the grass mowed. They just don't have anyone to rip to them right now. So I think that compared to someone that inherited their house, they just don't want the house, so they leave it abandoned for the city to take care of. I think those are two different examples that we can use on how myself and the city manager can use discretion when we put these laws into effect. Because we have to be fair with people, right? A lot of people don't mow their grass. There might be a reason why they didn't mow their grass. Maybe they're in Columbus getting cancer treatment, and they've been in Columbus for 2 weeks. It's my job to figure out, as the code officer, what's going on in that person's life. And I do that a lot. I talk to people quite often. Quite often people don't answer my calls, and then I have to fight them in the court, and then they talk to the prosecutor, they talk to the mayor. So, I mean, there's different ways that this allows us to approach this issue. And I think the fees need to be imposed because there's never been a fee imposed. And I think the fees need to be imposed because it's going to take quite a bit of time for me. I'm going to have to allocate my resources, which is just me, and I do 50% of the job as code officer. The other 50% is being the assistant to the city manager. I'm going to have to use my resources to be out working on these vacant buildings, which is an issue, rather than doing all the other 16 things that I need to do for the city. If that's going to happen, and you guys decide to do this fee, I think it needs to be worthwhile for the city to be able to impose these vacancy laws. I know for a fact that if I lived in the city, that if I lived beside a building like this, and no one's doing anything about it, the city officials aren't doing anything about it. I see rats coming out of it, I see raccoons, I see possums, I see snakes, they're not mowing their grass, there's trash everywhere. The house has been vacant for 10 years. And by the way, the city's not doing anything because our funds are limited. It takes money to take care of these properties. The city has to mow them. They're charged to the taxes. The taxes usually aren't paid in that situation. People abandon properties, they abandon the taxes as well. That's why we have so many buildings in the land bank's hands right now. It creates our police and our fire resources to these buildings. We're not talking about a rental that hasn't been rented for 2 months or 3 months. We're talking about real, genuine, vacant buildings that are a public nuisance. I need money to board them up. I need money to clean them up. I need money for grass cutting. Or I don't. The city does. The city just doesn't have the funding. I have no budget. So I guess, if you guys have any questions, and if you want the law, the vacant registration law, I will get you guys a copy. I'll get citizens copies. I want to go full force with banks. We have lots of houses that have been foreclosed on, that the banks have thousands of dollars, and they're not contacting me. They're not paying to mow grass. They're not cleaning up the trash. You got a vacant house, you got a little bit of trash, trash begets trash. More people dump trash. More people dump trash. You got 10 years of trash at some of these places. People don't want the buildings, they're not going to pay the taxes, so that route's not working for us. And if we did this, and the individual paid the vacant registration fees, they didn't need to take them into court. If they don't pay their taxes, I can't bring them into court. If they don't do this, I'm allowed by law to force them into court, and other obligations that can happen in court if they don't pay or come into court. Does that make sense? And I can't sue them to get the tax money. That's not my job. Any questions? I made it short.
Could you read chapter 7?
How many buildings do you estimate in town that you would consider vacant under this ordinance?
We have 7 registered. We probably have right around 50 to 75. That's a rough guess. That are nuisance buildings. We're not talking about.
A few years ago, I think it was 52.
I have 45 on my list to condemn this year. And remember, when I condemn, I don't get any money for that. The boards that I'm putting on the windows and doors to make them safe comes out of the taxpayers' money, not out of the owner's money. Most of the owners just leave. They leave the houses, they leave the buildings, and they leave the tax bill behind. And then you got 10 years. One of the things with the land bank is they can't take over properties that are being lived in. They can't take over properties unless there's a certain amount of tax owed. Some of the properties are not valued very much. Some of the tax monies are $200 or $300 a year. We're talking 10 years before we wanna wait 10 years to get these buildings taken care of?
Well, if they're
Then
boarded
that's
up,
passed.
yeah, if they're boarded up, then you can't get squatters in there.
You're
It's hard to get rid of squatters.
You're correct. However, board up, it takes money.
About $300 a house in materials.
Well, I was able to get a pallet of wood before hurricane season, so it was $6.80 for a pallet of minimal. What the code is telling me that I have to board up, because you can't put a 1/4 inch. Our code actually tells you how much. And my screws were $150 for a 5-gallon bucket. And I have to get the big long screws, because I got people that are unscrewing their screws to get into the building. And we're talking grass mowing. Our grass mowing season starts in April and ends in October. We have to mow those properties a couple times a month. I don't know how much people are charging to mow grass. The city is not charging enough. I would rather not cut my grass and have the city mow it, because it would be cheaper. No kidding, guys. We are so far behind on our fees. We are like living in the 80s here. We need to change our fees. People are saying, well, why would we pay this much for a vacant property? This is only a 1/4 of what some of the towns are charging.
What do we charge, $40
For what?
to mow?
35.
35?
What are we
Regardless of how big the lot is or
Doesn't
whatever.
matter.
Steve Pearson used to,
It
Steve
goes to
Pearson
the
used to,
taxes.
What
he used to charge $50 a city hall.
35.
We should be charging, it should
It
be
should be
that.
like 200. I mean, what's the maximum we could charge?
Okay, so
That to me is a bigger thing than,
$35 goes on your
Yeah.
taxes. We get only a percentage of that.
it's not enough. We need to evaluate all the fees and raise them to the maximum. I mean,
Because we're planning.
You're allowed to charge
I have
for
to
your
get
actual
planning and
expenses.
development.
Is that
Well,
what
but our guys, we've got 2 guys mowing.
That's not planning commission. You're allowed to charge what your actual expenses are.
What your
You can't
expenses
charge
are?
more. You get whatever your actual expenses are.
But then
That's
it
what
can't be cookie cutter. You can't come cut,
No, it's-
a lot this big and
You're
cut.
supposed to have a bill that you paid to give the auditor to put on the taxes. I mean, whatever it is it costs you to do it, and that's how much you can put on the taxes.
These property owners need to be held responsible. The only way in the last 2 years I've been able to get compliance is to dig into someone's pocket. I'm sorry. That's just how it is.
I agree with that. I'll tell you, my only reservation about this is that you say things like arbitrary and discretion, is that for some people, they feel that you're picking and choosing who you're going to enforce to. That's why I would prefer if the code and these things really spell out what are the exceptions, what are we going after, and being very specific. Because when you're arbitrary, when you use your discretion, that's when a lot of people feel it's unfair. And you're picking on me and 2 houses down. They can't really see a difference from the outside maybe, but maybe the inside there's no, there's holes in the floors or there's whatever. Okay, those are my reservations.
I get accused daily, on a daily basis, that I'm picking on.
I'm not accusing you. I'm just saying
No, I'm telling
that's
you.
that's why I would prefer to spell it out more clearly.
So our current code, I record those conversations that I have with individuals, and I let them know I'm recording so that they know that, hey, I've got this and I've got my back covered. But, and I tell them that, they feel like I am, because they get a citation, or they get a warning, they think that I'm picking on them. And they get a warning. And the violation is there. So I've had people that have unregistered motor vehicles on unapproved services, and I give them warnings, and they call in and say, I got this warning, and I feel like you're picking on me. And I heard a couple times this week that you're after me. And I'm like, well, maybe the people that are telling you that I'm after you are people that called in a complaint. no, because they got 2 citations as well, or 2 warnings as well. And I'm like, well, you have to understand I'm not the most popular person in the city because I tell people what they have to do on their property, which is unfortunate, and I wish I didn't have to. I wish everyone complied, but they don't. So I think with the current codes, I get accused of that, whether it's black and white or you know, it's.
I think some of those things you're talking about could be dealt with the planning commission to come up with those exceptions and list them out. And I also, on this 5920 ordinance, in 2 places, section C and section D. Now, council has the right to set a fee on any ordinance, and the ordinance has been passed. So, as far as setting the fee, we're within our rights to do that. But section C and section D both change the zoning code. It says you can't get a zoning permit if you haven't paid your vacant fee. And the reason I asked Gary last meeting, as the planning commission met on this, and he says I'll find out. And he didn't tell me they have, and I did find out they haven't. The planning commission has to, by state law, all changes to the zoning code has to come from the planning commission to the city council. City council can then either accept it as presented to them by the planning commission, or reject it and tell the planning commission to go back to work. We can't even change the planning commission's work. We can either vote to approve it or accept it. And I think if we're going to leave section C and D in here, it needs to go to the planning commission because it goes farther than set the fee. It actually changes the zoning code. So, I mean, that's why I asked Gary last week if this been to the planning commission, and evidently it hasn't.
Which one are you talking about? The one that council?
No, the section.
No. I mean, you said the planning commission. You mean the planning commission with council?
No, the planning commission.
The planning commission. not
Well, I
planning
will tell you that it did go, vacant building fees and vacant building topics did go to the planning commission. And that was about 6 months ago. And off and on, they've been meeting, they've been sick,
Well, we just got somebody on it, haven't we?
No, we've got a full staffing
All right, so
on the planning commission, but we have been talking about vacant buildings, we've been talking about the trash too, the filtering.
all that stuff that changes the zoning code has to go to the planning commission. They have to write it up, approve it in their minutes, and send it to council. And council can either accept their work or reject it. Council doesn't even have the power to change their work. So I just think we're going to leave C and D in there. I have no problem setting the fee, because the ordinance has already been passed on the vacant thing back in 2010 or 2011. And we have a right, one of council's duties is to set all fees. So it's perfect to set a fee. But to change the zoning code, it takes the planning commission to make those changes. And I think if we're going to leave C and D in there, we ought to send it back to the planning commission, or we could take C and D out and go ahead and pass it, and then take the C and D back to the planning commission and have them propose it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was aware of that. That's why I took it to planning initially. I took camping, I took several of the current codes that we're wanting to pass through planning. I think right now there's been a lot of confusion with their meetings, and they really haven't met.
Who's their chairman?
Betty Jo.
They
Not
know
Shelley.
Sarah.
Sarah's the secretary. Betty Jo's the.
They had a meeting,
That's
they had a meeting
that's
the last meeting we had. They had a meeting before our
We
meeting.
didn't have a meeting because we only had one person show up, and that was the BZA meeting. It wasn't planning.
Well, they're now BZA and planning, so it's the same now.
Right, we only had one member show up at the last meeting, and we had Gary Hunter here. I mean, we just haven't had any full meetings for quite a while.
The solution may be to remove C and D when we get to it and send that part back to the planning commission. I mean, the changes in the zoning code has to go.
Yeah.
and they have to be voted on by the planning commission and sent to council for.
Right. My only hesitation there, I mean, like, I would want to take C out because you can't have a demolition permit issued until the fee is paid.
Yeah, I agree,
Right?
it gives it teeth.
It gives it teeth. So you don't want to take that out. So I guess I would say it needs to go back to planning
I
to get
think,
approved and then come back.
I think council's also been talking about, reworking the zoning code so that it could be voted upon. But I think it's gonna cost a large fee, and I don't think council has talked about it recently.
well, all that work has to be the planning commission, if they need money. They need to let us know how much money they need to be able to work it. But all of it has to originate with the planning commission, and when it comes to us, our choice is to either vote it in or send it back to them.
Yeah, so even if we wanted to change the vacant code, the vacant, current vacant building code, right, we would be able to even I think that's why we went with another fee with a different ordinance.
Well, I don't understand that. And again, I asked Gary that question and he didn't answer, which is why the fee isn't being included in the vacant building code. Why is it starting a whole new
I
chapter?
think I remember that, and I think what happened was all those changes was made. And Steve Kirsten met with the planning commission, they presented them, and then council needed to set the fees,
Right.
and never did it.
And that is in here. Becky and I looked it up. I mean, it's under 91706. It says fees for the registration of vacant property shall be established by separate council ordinance.
The reason for that, the charter requires any fee that is charged to council said. So
But I still don't understand why it doesn't go in this code. Why it doesn't go in the code? Why it starts a whole new chapter in code?
the reason for that is so you can change the fees for the years.
Okay.
In other words, if you set a fee, say in 1980, and you get to 2015 or 2020 and your fees are ridiculously low,
Yeah.
without that having to go back to the planning commission, council can just raise the fee.
Okay.
That's the same like lawn mowing fees we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Well,
Because you were saying that
there's a,
planning too.
yeah,
But I think what Elizabeth's saying though, is she's saying, why can't we have it written in the code under that same
That same section.
section?
There's already a section for it, wasn't there?
Yeah,
Because we're still gonna create the fee by ordinance.
Right. It says fee should be established by ordinance,
Yeah.
but we still have to create the fee by
So
ordinance.
she's saying, why can't it be filed, instead of creating a new chapter under,
oh, I agree with that. I misunderstood you, brother.
Yeah, I don't understand why
yeah, I thought
we're creating a whole new chapter for that.
It's 91706, is fees, a vacant property registration form or registration fee shall be filed with the city manager. Fees for the registration of vacant properties shall be established by separate council ordinance.
Correct, but it can still be in the same,
It should still be in the same chapter.
Yeah.
It's like if I was looking for it,
it should be there.
I mean,
then it's easier to find.
you should be able to
Yeah,
find it.
correct.
Do you mean chapter or, title? I mean, chapter or.
I think you're saying it should be right in the vacant.
It should be
The vacant
chapter
ordinance.
917.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is where the fee should
What if
be.
you do 918?
Yeah, and Mary had to create 918, and I think that's a
That's
whole
a lot
other.
of stuff that, if we just table it for, till they could be.
Do they meet just
I know.
regularly once a month, or do they meet ad hoc
We
when
have,
needed?
yeah, we have the first Tuesday of every month is the scheduled meeting date,
Okay.
but they haven't met for
Okay,
a
so they
while.
could call a special meeting then.
Oh, anytime, 24 hours.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
know, this is on that.
So if we can maybe have that done before the next council meeting, so we can move this along.
I can try to get that done.
Betty Jo used to come to the meetings before COVID.
Right.
I think that what's going on is everyone just can't get on board with their schedule for whatever reason, and some of them's been sick, and there's just been a lot of issues.
If it's supposed to be the first Tuesday of every month, I mean, then they should have it in there on the commission, they should have that on the calendar. They shouldn't do that.
Well, I think what went on is for years, they weren't really getting much work, and so they quit meeting, and now they're getting bombarded with work from me. But I mean, for 2 years, they really didn't have much work. No one was giving them anything
But
to
that's,
do.
it's
And I
Big
think
Joe though, yeah, Anthony's still in there.
Yeah, Anthony Davis is there, Fred Holmes, Sarah Milligan, and then I meet with them. I'm there with them when they have their meetings.
Should be one more, right?
Yeah, who am I missing? We do have one more.
Yeah.
They can meet anytime that they can all get their schedules together, as long as there's just a public notice of the meeting.
Well, and we have to have it televised.
Right.
And they like for me to be there to help them as well, so we all have to get on the same page.
We're not really talking about it yet, so
Okay, I do have another question, about the properties that you have condemned and given the eviction notice of it. When do you think and you've already contacted the prosecutor's office, you mentioned, when do you anticipate that those will be boarded up?
I haven't contacted the prosecutor's office.
Oh, you haven't, I'm sorry, I thought you said that, okay.
No. So I did the 3-day eviction, and they were non-compliant, so then I went the next step and sent all the information over to Gary Hunter's secretary, so she can get a hold of the court so we can start a case. And Gary was telling me it could be 4 to 6 weeks before we can even have a court hearing. So it would have to be heard, and as you know, evictions can take a while to get a spot on the docket. I'm hoping that the judge that we get understands that these buildings are they're blighted to it. I mean, they're a public health hazard. Bodily fluids and stuff like that that's just running out there, and no sewage. And so hopefully, and I don't know because I can't speak for the judge. As soon as our case is done and our court case has been heard and a judgment has been made, as soon as they're out on board, I got a crew ready. I've got my supplies. It's getting boarded up and it's getting reported because the majority of them haven't paid their taxes for quite a while, and it's going to be reported to the land bank.
Okay.
And the land bank will step in on those properties.
That's what I was going to ask. I don't think this is even on. People are complaining they can't. How does that happen? So you evict, you condemn. At what point does it go to the land bank? Does there have to be a period of time?
So an individual cannot be occupying the structure.
Whether it doesn't matter that they're illegally occupying the structure.
It doesn't matter if they're illegally occupying. It does to me, because that's why we're taking them to court.
Right, I'm just saying though, but
They're not the land. Somebody could be squatting in it, they still can't.
Okay.
And the evictions are just like a landlord doing it.
Yeah.
Those civil cases are not criminal cases, so it's the same way as if anybody that has a rental. So those are low priority with the court during COVID too, so.
When it does turn criminal after they're condemned and boarded up, we catch them in there.
Yes, it becomes criminal, because we're going to placard it, and no one's allowed them, and then the land bank will take them over, and then that can take some time, because, it's all about funding.
Right.
It's all about funding. I'm hoping, Rick and I have had conversations about working together as a team, that once we know the building needs boarded up, then maybe Rick can do some of the funding through the land bank to pay for the boarding. So the city's not putting it on the taxes, which eventually goes to the land bank anyway, and then they can't take some of those fees off legally. Any fees that I put in there for cleanup, they really can't take that off legally, so.
Okay.
So all these that have people in them, are they all squatters?
Some of them are owner-occupied.
Wow.
Oh, really?
This has been history for the city of Nelsonville. I don't think ever have we evicted individuals out of their homes that have been evicted. So it's hopefully we make a precedent of this, and we can let people know, hey, you don't need to get your sewer and water for 15 years, not having it,
Well, also maybe Jobs and Family Services can try to find suitable housing somewhere, with some sort of assistance if they know what's going on. Maybe we should, get a social worker to look at some of the owner-occupied things and see if there's a way we can, at least make an attempt to, see that we're.
I have attempted, so before doing this whole process, I've worked with most of these individuals for a long time, for probably a year. I've given them tax information on fixing the houses. I've given them information from, I have this community resource packet that I hand out to individuals, and it's got all resources in Athens County, and I think just a lot of them choose not to.
Well, I don't think any of them's going to be able to rehab the houses, but maybe one of the social workers from Jobs and Family Services can help try to find them suitable housing somewhere with rental assistance. So,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
All righty. Anything else, Beck? Is there anything else?
Any other questions?
Sure.
Where am I at?
38 minutes. 38 minutes, right on ahead. All right. So wonderful. Okay. All right. Thank you, Becky, for the very informative update. So let's go to, we're going to second reading on ordinance 58-20.
Is there an extra agenda?
Yes. Not for you, Taylor.
There's one in the copy machine. Ordinance number 58-20, an ordinance declaring police department equipment and vehicles not needed for a public purpose and authorizing the city manager to destroy, sell, or give to other political subdivisions said equipment. Whereas the police department has equipment and vehicles not needed for a public purpose which can be destroyed, sold, and/or donated to other political subdivisions. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, that 1, the city hereby declares the following equipment and vehicles not needed for a public purpose and authorizes the city manager to destroy, sell, or give to other political subdivisions said equipment. 1, 10 ballistic vest body armor expired, destroy. 2, 1 308 Remington rifle with scope, sell. 3, 1 Glock handgun, model 18, sell. 4, 1 Jeep Cherokee, sell. 5, 1 Chevy Astra minivan, sell or donate to another law enforcement agency. 6, 26 Motorola high band radio batteries, donate to another law enforcement agency or destroy if we cannot find any takers. 7, 4 Motorola high band radios, sell or donate to another law enforcement agency. 8, 5 times 26 tasers, destroy. 9, 8 times 26 taser holsters, destroy. 10 times 26 taser batteries, destroy. 11, 2 Nikon digital cameras, donate to another law enforcement agency or destroy if we cannot find any takers. 12, 1 Canon digital camera, donate to another law enforcement agency or destroy if we cannot find any takers. 13, 3 Kodak digital cameras, donate to another law enforcement agency or destroy if we cannot find any takers. 2, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law, duly enacted by council on second reading on the 10th day of August, 2020, Nelsonville City Council.
Any discussion? Motion to adopt? Second.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dunphy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, before we read ordinance 59-20, which is what we've been discussing in the time, what is our, do we want to table it and send it back to the Planning and Development Commission?
Planning.
Planning
Commission.
Not Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll move to table it for the time being, and have Planning Commission
Okay.
by next council meeting.
okay.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dunphy?
Yes. Okay.
Ordinance number 60-20, an ordinance amending the Nelsonville codified ordinances to add anti-scavenging. Whereas Nelsonville codified ordinances needs to be amended to add anti-scavenging. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, that 1. The Nelsonville City Code is amended to add the following. 9-19-01 scavenging. A. No person other than an employee of the city or waste contractor retained by the city in the performance of their duties shall tamper with or sort through garbage, refuse, or recyclable materials placed out for collection. B. Whoever violates this section is guilty of scavenging, a minor misdemeanor, and upon conviction thereof shall be fined in an amount not exceeding $150 for each violation. 2. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest date permitted by law, duly enacted by council on second reading on the 10th day of August, 2020, Nelsonville City Council.
Any council discussion?
I have a question. So I'm not sure who would know. So my question is, how is someone going to prove this when it does happen? How is it going to be enforced, and who's going to clean up the mess?
Well, the police can enforce it, and
If what, though?
I think what the problem is that people come make a mess, and then the property owners
Are responsible for it.
have to clean the mess up.
So, I mean, how do you see someone out there,
In the end,
You see someone out there, you call the police, they come?
and then they're gone?
Currently, the state law is you have to put up a no trespassing sign. And if they're trespassing, anybody can grab garbage. If it's out on the street, the state says it's trash at that point, it's free for all. Unless you put up a sign. You put a sign on your dumpster, you put a sign in your trash can. Then at that point, you can get them for trespassing. Okay? Most towns create these anti-scavenging rules because the state doesn't have a law for the police officers to follow unless you're trespassing. So anti-scavenging means if police officers see someone jumping in the back of a dumpster and they're digging out scrap, putting it in their car without permission by the owner, that at that point they can be ticketed.
I guess my question would be, what, do you have to actually, just hurry up and run and get your phone and get your picture before they leave? Because that's the only way to
Be like any other crime.
it'd be like a police officer. Well, actually, if you knew who they are, you could swear a complaint.
Then it's just your word against theirs.
Well, not if you took a picture of them doing it. But that's the way it is with any criminal charge. It's the state's responsibility to prove it.
Yeah.
The thing I see, if you just knock on the door, I've set a TV out, a no sleeper or whatever. Just come knock on the door, I'd walk out with them and give it to them. They don't have to dump the whole can out. They don't have to dump the whole can out on your driveway to see what's there, and then walk off and leave it dumped. And I think nobody cares if they come knock on the door and say, "Hey, you got an old set of golf clubs sitting there, can I have them?" You said, "Sure," and then they're not violating the law. But the problem being is they're coming by at 2 o'clock in the morning and they're dumping people's trash cans, and if there's something they want in it, they take it. If there ain't, they don't bother to pick the trash back up.
So that's what I meant. So this law really isn't going to help that at all.
Well, if the police officer's on patrol,
It gives them the ability.
see somebody, right now, they don't have the ability.
They can't do anything.
There's not a
right now.
sign up that says no trespassing.
But so if this was at my house and somebody came and dumped, I would have to put a no trespassing sign on my rollaway, you're saying?
Without this law.
Without this law, yeah.
Oh, without this law, I would. Okay,
This allows
this
them.
law, okay.
I mean, we all know what happens to signs. We
Yeah.
ignore them. They don't see the sign, they're after the stuff. So this way you don't have to buy a sign, and if someone's digging through your stuff, you call police, they'll go out, and they can get them for this. Which is wonderful.
Well, the biggest thing is if this police officer on patrol and he sees someone go up and get something out of the trash, I'd imagine if he don't dump the can all over their place, he ain't gonna care. But if they see somebody dump the can and walk off and leave all the trash, he's gonna go, wait a minute. That's, and I think that's, you gotta use that to try to, nobody cares about somebody getting something out of their trash. What they care about is making a mess and not cleaning it up.
Right.
And I can also, if I see, as the code officer, I see well to me since it's, it's a messaging app.
Any other questions?
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 62-20. Need someone to introduce it.
That's still in the second reading.
Oh,
Oh,
it's
first reading.
Oh, 60, okay, 62.
62-20.
It will have to be fixed.
Oh.
Have to fix. No.
You sent an email. Did
What's
you
the
want,
question? I'm sorry.
did
I was
you
just
want this added to it?
Oh, well, yes, I sent the email Friday, right?
For the fire department grant.
Yeah, for two things. One was the more routine language at the bottom just got left out. It's not even language I came up with, it was Mr. Hunter's, about authorizing the auditor's office to increase, it's called the Certificate of Resources.
Same amount.
But yeah, it just basically, you don't ever decrease your certificate of resources unless you lose a funding source. You increase it when you have unanticipated receipts. The Church Street grant was not reported to the county. It's being passed as an expense here, so I have to report to the county, hey, we're expecting more money than we expected. Earlier this year, we did that without putting the language in the ordinance, and they kicked it back and said, you can't do this unless that language is in the ordinance. So it just basically has to authorize the city auditor to request an amendment to the certificate of resources. That's the first part. The second part was Chief Barber had grant money come in. I think we knew you'd gotten approved for it, but we didn't know the money would come so quickly. And obviously, he can't either accept or spend the money without council approval, since council appropriates all money at the city. So when the question was asked to Mr. Hunter Thursday or Friday, or Wednesday actually, I believe it was, he was heading out of town and he said, just ask him to put a cap in at the bottom of 62, so council can either decide to do that or not.
Well, can you give the clerk the,
I have the email if I can get it.
well, if you can just give me the line.
Do you know where it needs to state in the language that needs to be used for the auditor to request that information? Do you know where in the ordinance it should read it?
It usually, so a few of your appropriations, it's not, and this is kind of hard to explain too, but it's not required for every appropriation, that's why you won't see it every time, but it's usually at the end, either, on here it would be either point 4, so in other words, before or after point 3.
Okay.
It's only with large things, so if we decide we're going to spend more money on $100 more on paper, the county doesn't care. The county's like, we can trust you guys to spend $100. But a $500,000 Church Street project, the county wants to know, okay, do you have enough money coming in to fund this, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, can we take number 4 and make that 5,
Yep.
and make number 4, and then what's the language that we need to have in there?
I was just pulling it up.
Want me to read it? I have it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it says, the city auditor is authorized to request and submit necessary requirements to the county auditor and budget commission for this ordinance to be in effect.
As far as authorized.
Okay, the city auditor is authorized to request and submit necessary requirements to the county auditor and budget commission for this ordinance to be in effect.
And then the
Appropriation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The appropriation, is it under number 1, or,
Yeah.
you know,
It is
to line item 100, 200, 42000. It's called fire grant expense.
Sorry, can you do that again slower?
Just from the beginning?
Yeah.
$2,836.67 to line item 100-200-42000 called fire grant expense. And then in that, somehow council also has to authorize us to accept it. So I think anyone council has already accepted, so you have to say, this is authorizing the acceptance of.
That is going to take an ordinance. We can do the appropriation on the thing just by amending the appropriation ordinance. But an ordinance accepting a grant is going to take, it's, council can only speak by ordinances. And I think everybody here will vote for it the next meeting, but it's going to take an ordinance to accept it.
Can we appropriate it though now, even though we haven't accepted it?
No,
So why don't we just go through the whole procedure?
I don't know. He asked that question.
Council can appropriate it, I just.
Can you appropriate it where you have it?
I just can't spend it. It essentially, it's like if you appropriate it for Christmas decorations, I guess, we wouldn't spend it till Christmas, so. Essentially, you're saying you're expecting the expense, but I can't.
We can't appropriate anything that isn't in the bank. If it's in the bank, we could probably appropriate it.
Right, but you're appropriating from the unappropriated balance of general fund, it's just a fire grant expense for the fire budget.
I think there's no problem appropriating that. As long as the money's in the bank, you can't appropriate money that you don't have. So I think the budget commission is going to be at.
Right.
I say we just wait, have Gary write up a ordinance.
I thought you had to take,
We can, I guess we can wait, it's just, the waiting is just, hey, you can't spend this grant money until council acts on it, so.
Can you still do the fire
If it's really important, we could have a meeting at 6 o'clock next Monday, a 5-minute full council meeting and pass it. I don't know what you're talking about. Harry,
It's,
is it important, Harry?
well, it's all important, but,
It's not gonna say it's not important.
right, I mean,
Good luck with that.
it's firefighting gear. Some grants are.
We can just do it on the first reading next time, right?
You know,
that's what we were doing this time, right? Just like an emergency.
It was unanticipated, I mean, we knew he was getting accepted, but when it hit the bank, it's in the actual city's bank account.
See the difference on this for the first reading, it don't take the second reading.
I actually had to call the state, the state Office of Budget Management in Whale Culture for a while because
Can we appropriate out of general fund and reimburse when we accept the grant?
Yes,
There you go.
let's do that. Let's get the man's firefighting equipment. Or you can appropriate out of the capital improvement fund and then reimburse it. Does it last 5 years, Harry?
some grants you can, some grants you can't.
The short answer is yes, it has a 10-year lifespan.
So we could appropriate it out of the capital improvement fund and then reimburse the capital improvement fund when we accept the grant, put the grant back in. So we need the language taken this out, appropriate now the capital improvement fund in this ordinance here. We got unappropriated balance in the capital improvement fund. So whatever that fund is, make the appropriation out of that into this ordinance. And when we do the ordinance, accepting the money, we'll put it back in the capital improvement fund.
Do you have that phone number by chance?
Or it's a 600 fund, I don't have all the line items in front of me.
Can you go get the line items? We'll work on the next one. Do we have another one yet? We'll work
Is
on
it this one? Is it, oh,
Is it from last year?
600, 980?
What's the title?
500, this is, increase, $500,000 increase to fund number 600 capital improvement. Line item 600.
It was in a recent meeting.
We're gonna-
And 600,
we're gonna do an agenda here.
Right here.
980.
Okay, I have it here, it's from a few meetings ago.
Sorry.
600-600
And what was the amount?
2836 and 67 cents.
So from 600-600-67596.
Correct.
The $2,836.67 from capital improvement, which is the 600. What's the line item we're appropriating?
I just read it.
Oh, I have that one.
Oh,
100-200-420.
I'm sure that's not
we do that before we introduce it. We don't have to bring it in.
I'm sure that's not what you feel.
It's gonna work?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Just want to make sure it's gonna work.
Now somebody has to introduce it.
I'll introduce it.
Can someone introduce this?
I just introduced it.
I'll
Be laying it down short there, something.
Ordinance 62-20, an ordinance amending the appropriations ordinance to increase/decrease appropriated funds of various line items to meet current expenses. Whereas the city needs to increase and decrease appropriations in various line items to meet current expenditures. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, that 1, there is hereby appropriated from the unappropriated balance the following sums. $14,000 increase to water fund number 700, line item 700-725-40010 operating supplies. $14,000 increase to sewer fund number 750, line item 750-725-40010 operating supplies. $500,000 increase to fund number 600 capital improvement, line item 600-600-90080. $18,000 increase to sewer fund 750, line item 750-770-80090 OWDA loan 8223. $5,000 increase general fund number 100, line item 100-370-30010 office supplies. $6,000 increase sewer fund number 750, line item 750-760-50013 fuel. $1,500 increase to general fund number 100, line item 100-6243, that's wrong, right? 100-624-33019.
Yep, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, repairs to buildings. $2,500 increase to general fund number 100, line item 100-100-21300 educational. $8,500 increase to general fund number 100, line item 100-340-10010 salary and wages. $8,500 increase to water fund number 700, line item 700-340-10010. $2,836.67 to from line item 600-600-67596 to 100-200-42000 fire grant expense. $8,500 increase to sewer fund number 750, line item 750-340-10010 salary and wages. $10,000 increase to general fund number 100, line item 100-200-10013 medical. $2,000 increase to water fund number 700, line item 700-700-10013 medical. $5,000 increase to water fund number 700, line item 700-720 1013 medical. $2,000 increase to sewer fund number 750, line item 750-750-10013 medical. $5,000 increase to sewer fund number 750, line item 750-760-10013 medical. 2. The appropriations in the following line are decreased. $5,000 decrease to general fund number 100, line item 100-405-10010 salary and wages. $25,000 decrease to general fund number 100, line item 100-350-10017 city prosecutor. 3. Total appropriations are increased, decreased by said amount. 4. The city auditor is authorized to request and submit necessary requirements to the county auditor and budget commission for this ordinance to be in effect. 5. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law, duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension on the 10th day of August 2020, Nelsonville City Council.
Could you repeat?
No.
I just had to say it.
I had to do that, so. All right, and second?
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Motion goes on.
Any council discussion?
Any questions?
Motion goes on.
Second.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
All right, ordinance 63-20.
I'll introduce it.
Let me ask first.
This guy. Forward you go.
Ordinance number 63-20, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to purchase a utility locating device and push camera and declaring an emergency. Whereas the sewer project engineer has requested the city purchase a utility locating device and a push camera, both of which should be reimbursable from the sewer project funding. Now therefore be it ordained by the Nelsonville City Council, State of Ohio, that Section 1, the city manager is authorized to purchase a utility locating device for $7,418.35 and a push camera model C542 for $8,962. Section 2, this ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to ORC 731.30 because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the items can be purchased to keep the sewer project on schedule, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules on the 10th day of August 2020, Nelsonville City Council.
Move to suspend.
Second?
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes. On discussion, we approved this in utility committee. And we found out they were using 17th century technology of wetting sticks to find water.
Causes,
I'm not kidding, I'm talking the truth.
it kind of causes a little bit of a problem.
Is this for, I guess my question is this for the new sewer lines?
It's about, you have to find utility lines, you don't damage them while you're doing it.
This would be actually the city's,
Well, we would own it, right?
Yeah,
We would own it.
And-
we'll have it even after that.
We'll have it even after that.
And
So they
the
can,
only thing I was gonna ask Taylor is because it says should be reimbursable, that if it is not reimbursable, this is about $16,000, we have that cushion
Yeah, to do water.
to cover it in
Well,
the
so-
hundred.
I don't know all the context as far as the legalese behind why this needed a specific ordinance to purchase this. Usually council just approves the budget.
Right.
City manager makes the purchases. I think it has to do with
Because
the
this is
reimbursement.
because this is going through the
So we're gonna
sewer
put it through the
plant.
grant.
It's
Okay.
going to the sewer
Because
plant.
part of the sewer plant project.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is we made $300,000 purchases for that project.
Okay.
Like it's nothing. So I don't know. I assume it should be reimbursable, meaning if the EPA loan, when it says reimbursable, it's just going to a loan. We're going
Right.
to eventually pay for it. But if they don't, it will just come out of the money we set aside to start up the sewer
Okay.
plant project. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is kind of what I just said. It's like, it's going to come out of this fund that is money moves in and out
The
of
loan also
it.
has loan forgiveness, so.
And we also have 10% contingency set aside.
Okay, that's what.
We have an average.
Right.
Okay.
I'm assuming this is the city's attempt to, because I think there was.
We ran
EPA
into
was
some,
like,
yeah, we
some
ran into some
fight.
sewer lines and whatnot that were making some funny bends.
Yeah.
We need a push camera.
To see where everything's at.
Every time
Right.
we run a push camera, costs us $3,000.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, the ordinance itself must be the city's attempt to solidify and say, hey, we think this is a project expense, so
Okay.
we're putting it in.
Right, that's exactly, and also to try to, since we're getting some loan forgiveness, try to get it, instead of paying full price, when it goes into the project and we get loan forgiveness, that we're getting about half price of what we did, if we just paid for it.
Thank you.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes. So no city manager report. Let's get back dialing in. Who's not dialing in? I need to get an invite report, anybody else?
He's been pretty good
Asheville,
at
Asheville. If you'd read your emails, you know where it's at. I've got my GPS tracker. So, all right. Well, good of the order has arrived. So, I'll start. Mr. Taylor, would you like to start, please? Yeah, I want to say happy belated birthday to Becky Carter there.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Becky. Happy birthday to you.
And one or two more.
What's your?
January 28th.
Oh.
Fake news.
That was a lie.
Oh,
I think we should put
NBC.
that position posted in the paper immediately.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lie. I did this personally.
Oh, my God.
Becky?
And your 23-year-old daughter said, what about that?
I appreciate the birthday.
No problem.
Oh, my God.
Keep it up.
I'm just saying mine's in 3 weeks. So you really want to
Forget it.
Becky ruined it for everybody.
It's like the Mexican restaurant where they'll bring you ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah, fried ice cream.
I'm ready for ice cream.
All right. Okay. You like that? Okay, Joe. Mr. Sherman.
Couple quick things, just, the city's still under emergency procedures, so, we still have to get our temperatures taken every time we come into the city building, for one thing. Second of all, just want to make a quick motion to accept the city manager's decision to discard Officer Randolph.
The city manager has to make that recommendation.
He already has.
Where? Has anybody received it?
So there's a motion on the table. To accept the city manager's decision for dismissal of Officer Randall.
Shouldn't we have to get that from the city manager though? I mean, it's just a question, I don't know.
It's really improper without the law director here, and without without being able to question. We're the arbiter of that, the final arbiter of that, and we should be able to ask the city manager the questions about why he did that. And it's very improper for him not to make the recommendation here in council.
And without a city attorney.
And without the city attorney, and to go into executive session and ask the reason. I just think it's not proper.
Can we put it up next time, or is that?
It's up to the president of council.
Well, I think what we'll do is, I think we'll, take a real quick executive session, if you want to go the order, and I'll try to get Mr. Franklin to ask him.
Mr. Hunter, do you know?
I believe it was already ran through Mr. Hunter. I believe that was, I believe that part was already done, but I'm not sure.
I think he was at the meeting,
He was at the meeting, yes.
and the paper was turned in.
So can we just table the
We just-
motion for the moment,
I'll
then?
table that motion.
So after executive. Where then?
I'd just like to take a minute to ask everyone, if you can, to please support our local businesses at this time. It'd be really helpful, even if we don't normally go to places, maybe just make the extra effort to support our local business.
Thank you. Well, first, congratulations again to the birthday girl. I've been paying attention to our census numbers. I actually sent you an email the other day, Taylor. According to the federal website, Nelsonville's into 50%, give or take, as far as people getting back their census reports. State of Ohio is about 65%. Just like to encourage everyone to send in their census and see what they can get to help out the city.
Kind of piggybacking on what Carla said, also as we're getting ready to hopefully send kids back to school, to encourage everybody to keep wearing their mask. We're hearing about football seasons being canceled and other things, and if we want things to move forward, we need to be proactive in keeping everybody healthy. I know a lot of parents who are working need their kids to go back to school, and so just wear your mask, wash your hands.
Okay. All right. I have a letter here,
Hold up a minute.
but, Kurt,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Anybody that's ever had me type or text something to them knows that I'm a horrible texter. I went to unlock Andrea's house, and my big fat fingers messed up her alarm, and I wanted to thank the nice young police officer who showed up and didn't shoot me. But I accidentally set the alarm off, and I tried to get it canceled, but my fat finger struck twice, and nice young officer come up and didn't shoot me, and I'd like to just thank him for that. He was very pleasant, very nice.
That's a good thing. All right, we have a letter here, from Bobby Smathers III. He has, to whom it may concern, I'd like to express my desire to join the zoning board of Nelsonville. Do we have an opening on the zoning board? We have 4 openings.
Yeah, I can't remember seeing that.
All right.
BCA, or should we talk about BCA?
Easy.
I just, before we make the motion, can someone jump on their phone and check and make sure he's registered to vote for City of Nelsonville?
Pink.
I thought he said she.
No, I didn't say.
You said Bobby Smathers III?
Yeah.
What is it? That's very simple. It's vote dot.
It's, Athens County Board of Elections.
I've got it last.
You have it?
I assume it's probably Robert.
Yeah.
If it comes back that Bobby is registered in the city, then I'm okay with that.
I'm fine too.
Yeah, I'm fine with it too.
Yeah. I'm fine with any warm body that wants to serve.
We need 3 more people for the BCA.
We actually need 3 more people. If we approve him, we need 3 more.
Civil services full.
So this is full. Yes, they are registered.
Okay. Move to accept.
Good pronoun use.
Motion to accept, Mr. Smathers, to the BZA.
Second that.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can I ask whoever, I don't know if Andrea is the keeper of these lists or whoever, could you send us out the list of all these,
I don't actually have.
Okay.
She does.
Becky, keeper of the list, are you the keeper of the list? Could you send us, the list of all these different boards and commissions, who's on them, maybe what their terms are? I know, and what we know what their terms are, and, so we know what the vacancies are, so we know where we stand with all these. Because, especially because we're new, just to really understand.
So can I say something?
No.
We have.
Your 38 minutes is up.
We've had a guy on the civil service that he can't remember the last time he was sworn in. He thinks 10 years ago. There was never a re-election or a appointment. There was.
There are minutes, aren't there?
Not really been.
Maybe we can go out and recruit.
Well, I think the issue is the standard that we have hasn't been met for quite a long time because there hasn't been enough votes. So they pretty much, someone gets on there, they stay on there because no one else wants it.
Okay.
And I hate to say that,
All right, I think now's a good time to assess and establish what those, where those terms are, and just so that we're in compliance with the way it reads, you know, that, because some of these are supposed to have people, you know, appointed for 3-year terms, 5-year terms, you know, staggered terms. I think it's just a good time for us to assess where we are, and
I think the city manager does that.
Okay.
And I think they do that.
that's fine. I just think, I would also like us to have the list so we know who's on these things.
Who to contact.
And who to, yeah.
I can give you a list, but I can't give you the terms.
Okay.
That's a start. Okay, motion to go into the executive session to discuss personnel issues. Inviting in the city manager, and that's it. And us. So moved. Second. Motion to come out of executive session. So moved. Second.
Wait, is it working?
Yeah.
It usually has little buttons.
Ms. Jones?
Oh, now there.
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes. All right, Mr. Frank.
You need to put him on the
Up on the
microphone.
microphone. Oh,
Hello, everyone. This is Scott Frank calling in. I would like to make a recommendation to council to terminate Mr. Randolph from the police department.
Okay, motion to accept
Motion to
Officer, or Scott Frank's, recommendation to
say so moved.
So moved.
Yeah.
So moved.
Wait, who seconded? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Enjoy your time off.
Are we ready
Thank you,
to
council.
adjourn now?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?